For the next couple of stops along the tour, Gdansk was hyper-vigilant. Someone here knew who she was, and obviously planned to expose or harm her. At the training rooms, she listened to each of the students as they practiced their electromagnetism, and the instructor, who gave her a less than interesting speech on how they taught their magic at the academy. And although she smiled and gave pointed questions to keep the instructor talking, she had no intention of learning the filthy craft that subjugated her people. At the metalworks, however, she hung on to every word of the head fixture as they worked on repairs of a ginormous ship, and stared at the foreman as he loaded the ship with cargo. The sound of the hammer and the creaking of wood surrounded her as she watched the progress of the massive hull. A worker began talking with his comrade while they moved an important and fragile-looking package onto the ship, and she thought she heard a match. However, the head fixture's second utterance dashed her hopes, or fears. Her paranoia extended even to Nice, whose voice sounded more and more similar to the one she was looking for with each word. Even walking in the gilded hallways between destinations, coloured lights spilling onto the floor from stained Victor-Tectrian windows, and the sounds of the massive electrical cables humming with power above her. She couldn't help but listen to the tones of those rushing past her, seeking any match to the mysterious voice that tormented her so. It wasn't until she got back on the circuit, going towards their last stop, that she heard the voice again. They had just visited the Majestic Influences Museum, a painful stop for her, when the long-necked dinosaur made a second appearance. His heavy-set eyes locked on to Nice, and he made a dash towards them. "You! That was the last straw. All you people here, Fluxians!" He stopped and spat on the ground as he spoke. "I earned my place here, yet you all treat me like scum. I know why I'm not one of you, you precious Fluxians. I'm a Pangean, and I'm proud." Nice raised his eyebrows, seemingly appalled at the student's brazenness, when the student seemed to grow thinner as he raised his arms. Then, to Nice and Gdansk's astonishment, he lifted them off the ground and levitated them towards a nearby wall at rapid speed. The telltale metal protrusion gave it away as a circuit entrance, and Gdansk braced herself for another trip. The sensation of having all sense of gravity removed from her, of having her entire body be rendered weightless at once, was so overwhelming to Gdansk that she almost missed the Pangean's parting words. "How do you like the feel of a real Pangean, Sancho?" was the last thing she heard, before being sent one last time into the wires above her head. This time, there was no blue. In fact, there was no colour at all. There was barely even nothing, such was the voidishness of the space Gdansk found herself in. The voices returned, louder than before, and Gdansk, having nothing else to focus on, allowed them to penetrate her and worm their way into her body, until it felt to her as though her entire being was the voice's wrathful words. "Perrose, you come closer and closer to us. We wait in exuberance. To end a remnant of 17. How will you react when you learn of our plans? Will you join us? Or will this be your desolation? What of old Venice or Gloria? How would they react if Perrose the Learned returns to them one piece at a time? Some in piles of ash, others fried, some raw. We shall see. But know this. The hour of reckoning is here. You have but one chance." Light blinded her when the world returned to Gdansk, and the Force thrust her against a wall, winded. When her eyes adjusted, she could look around. There were no colours here, nor were there any sources of natural light. Instead, all she could see were expanses upon expanses of grey corridors with yellow trims, going on for as far as she could see. Worse yet, Nice, her only guide, was nowhere to be seen. Placing a hand against the cold stone wall, Gdansk slowly got to her feet, struggling to get her bearings. She had almost gotten her breathing back under control when a sudden roar echoed off the walls and put her into a state of panic. Red lights suddenly flashed and a klaxon blared. Some unaudible message came over a hidden tannoy system, but no matter how much Gdansk strained her ears, she could only make out a few words. Be warned, a subject has breached containment and is headed towards Wing D27. It is considered extremely dangerous. All personnel should be concentrated. Another roar, a lower pitch and a strange grinding sound attached, came, and the announcement abruptly ended. Gdansk heard what she suspected was the speaker falling to the concrete floor with a metallic thud. Lights still flashed, giving Gdansk glimpses of shadows that her terrified eyes struggled to determine as real or tricks of the light. As her left hand slowly moved back along the wall, at the far end of the corridor, a vast shadow showing a monstrous creature splayed across the opposite wall. A claw came from around the corner and snagged the wires attached to the ceiling. Gdansk realised what was about to happen too late. As she tried to get back onto the circuit, the metal protrusion fell and shattered, hitting upon the floor with a massive snap of electricity. The grinding snarl returned, and another shadow appeared in the red flashing light, at the other end of the corridor. This one was apish, a massive dorsal fin attached to its back. Gdansk could not escape. She looked up and down the corridor and saw one more off-shooting corridor halfway towards the clawed, monstrous creature she'd originally seen. Adrenaline pumping through her veins, she bolted without hesitation. But before she could reach the offshoot, the shadow revealed its true identity as some sort of dinosaur from the past, the likes of which she had only ever seen in books and digs. It came lurching around the corner, navy blue, spined and sharp-clawed. It roared at her, its spittle hitting her feet. The dinosaur's presence seemed to encourage the other shadow to reveal itself too. A bulky figure came round the corner, but he wasn't a man. Huge teeth stretched down from his mouth, almost hitting the floor, and the huge fin protruding from his back was sharp and gleaming black. Neither way was an option. With no choice available to her, Gdansk continued sprinting towards the offshoot corridor near the dinosaur. It roared again and sped towards her, its clumsy feet thudding against the floor. She was just barely too slow. She made it to the offshoot just as a claw came down upon her, scraping her back and leaving it bloody, staining the floor as she continued on. Her shirt immediately became sodden, yet she could not stop. Powering on, she ran down the corridor as both creatures engaged in battle, and she fought her own battle with consciousness. The sounds of tearing flesh and cries of pain echoed through the halls. After some time, Gdansk finally collapsed against a wall, thankful that they hadn't pursued her. But she didn't stop. She pushed herself back to her feet and kept going. the searing hot pain emanating from her back, distracting her from the rather concerningly large black mark her blood had left against the wall she had leaned on. She wandered the halls, lost to the world around her, not understanding where to go or how much time had passed. She wandered the halls until blisters adorned her feet, her back had no more blood to spare, and her mind had left her. She wandered the halls until eventually she gave up. Gdansk found a wall to sit against. She didn't notice the metal protrusion at the top of it. The cold soothed her ragged back. She closed her eyes and felt the last remnants of life drain away. An orb fell from the ceiling, and a hand reached out from the wall and grabbed hold of her, pulling her into the circuit. This time, she heard no voice. Flashes of Nice came to her sporadically, electricity escaping his fingertips. She woke, time and time again, to a burning sensation racking her back, and heat emanating from her, resulting in a clammy sweat, before drifting back into unconsciousness. When she finally fully awoke, after an amount of time she could not guess, her back no longer bled. Scars criss-crossed it, turning it into a lattice of pain. Nice was at her side, her arm held over his shoulder as he gently pulled her along with him. When he saw that she had awoke, he checked her over with concern before speaking. "I don't know where you ran off to, miss, but I found you just in the nick of time, it seems." Gdansk wearily smiled at him, but no words came to thank him for what he had done. "If you are quite ready, I think I know where we are. Watalia can organize something for you, and we can get you sorted. The office is just up ahead, though I do not know how we'll get back. The circuit is all out of whack." Gdansk did not have the energy to point out that she needed dire help, not a tour guide. So again, she followed Nice towards an inconspicuous door. A nameplate sat on the door. It bore the engraving, "Watalia, their majestic influence of education." Nice knocked. "Enter," came a voice from within, as the door swung open. Gdansk screamed, and screamed, and screamed, and screamed some more, as the sight she saw burned its way into her eyes and etched permanent pictures on the inside of her skull. Nice tried to calm her down, but it was in vain. As her sight failed her and her brain started to shut down, the last thing she could think about was that voice. The voice that invited her into the office. The voice of Watalia, a majestic influence. The same one she had heard during her trips through the circuits. She screamed and screamed to no avail. Nice had chalked her behaviour up to shock from her injuries, so he manhandled her, gentle as not to worsen her condition, to the door and pushed her inside. The door slammed shut, and the screaming ended in a caesura. Nice straightened his collar and glanced at it for a second. He felt a strange sense of unease at the silence. He looked at the nameplate, and it washed away. "Get well soon, Miss Gdansk. I look forward to working with you," he said, before gently sitting on the floor by the door.